Now we're on Daf Lamed Ches Amid Beis. Mo'avim atzmon lo kolshkein. How much more so in the case of Moav, who initiated the battle against Israel? We should certainly, says Moshe Rabbeinu, go out to battle against them. Allah Kodesh Baruch Hu lo ksha ol saldatcha ol saldat. He had a different thought, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu decides whether to destroy a nation based on what he sees. He, with a capital H, what he sees later down in the future. Shtei predos tovos yeshli lohotzi mehen rus hamoavov and amon hamonis. These are the two beautiful girls that are going to come out of Moab, and from them will be Malchus based David. And therefore, I will not allow you to destroy Moab. And this is what Ula says to Rav Shmuel, who lost his daughter. Halodvam kavachomer. Uma b'shvil shtei predas tovos chos HaKadosh Baruch Hu al shtei umos gedolos. Hashem spared these two great nations, Ammon and Moab, for the sake of two predos that would come out of them. Predos are gozels, like doves or birds. He desisted from destroying them. Bito shel Rebbe, the daughter of Rebbe, meaning of Rav Shmuel, im ksherahi urauyahi, if she is going to be the mother in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's perspective, looking down the line in the future, certainly he would have spared her. So basically, what Ula is telling Rav Shmuel is a very, very harsh kind of nechama, and it means accept the din of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because he knew that nothing great would come out of your daughter. Very difficult. Again, as I said earlier, I don't think we can understand this kind of nechama on our level. No good turn or good action will go unremitted, without reward. Even reward for a positive speech. And even if all that the person has in their favor is just a loshen nekiya utsnua, a proper speech, a modest speech, God will bestow schar. And let's see how we prove this, how Reb Chia proves this. De'ilu, with regard to the Bas Lot, Habachira, the older one, Dika Amra, she called her son that she had from her own father, Moav. And what does that mean? Moav means Ben Zemi Avia. That's a Lashon Pritzes. Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu Moshe al Totzer es Moav. So what's the implication? Don't go out to battle against them. Milchama hu deloha angaria ovid behu. Take whatever forces you need in order to be mishabi them, in order to subjugate them. But the Tzeira, the younger daughter of Lot, the Ka'amra, she called her son, when she was impregnated by her father Lot, Ben Ami, the son of my nation, meaning of my mishpacha. But she didn't use a name that would indicate from whom she became pregnant. So that's more of a lashon nekiya utznua. So Amalek Kodesh Baruch Hu Moshe v'karavta mul b'nei Amon al titzurem v'al tisgarer bam. In other words, it sounds like HaKadosh Baruch Hu was telling Moshe, don't even begin to attack Ammon at all. Ein l'sgaris mem klal. Da'afil angaria lo tavidu, not even to subjugate them like I allowed you to do in the case of Moab. V'yom Rab Chia bar Abba further, with regard to Ammon and Moab. Rab Yishuv ben Korch, li olav yaktim adam lidvar mitzvah. Person should be mizdares, he should have alacrity in fulfilling a mitzvah immediately, as soon as he has the opportunity, without delay. Bechira Litzeira Kadmasa Arba Doris L'Yisrael. In the case of the younger daughter of Lot, she was the one to take the initiative, and by one night, I guess you'd say, she had a relationship with her father, and therefore, Kadmasa Arba Doris L'Yisrael, the period of time in which the children from the second daughter, from the Tzeira, the descendants would enter into Klal Yisrael, was 4 doros earlier than the older daughter. And that's why we find Oved Yishai v'David Shlomo. We have 4 generations before we'll see Rechavam. And already from the time of Oved, we have Rus HaMoaviyah giving birth to Oved, and it's not from the Ammon generation. We have we have to wait till the 5th generation, which is the son of Shlomo. His name is Rechavam. Dechsiv, it says with regard to Rechavam, Malachim Al Perek Dalet, V'Shem Imo Nama Hamonis. So his mother was Naama Ha'amonis from Zera Ammon. And it wasn't until Rechavam that any descendants of Naama of Ammon would enter into Klal Yisrael. So see, the delay was 4 generations. So Rus HaMoaviyah is already early, and she's the Tzeira, who was Kadma Lebechira. Just 1 second. Yeah, so it seems like a complicated situation here in terms of the role of the mother of Moab, because here we're giving her an accolade and we're giving her credit, recognizing the fact that she was Kadma Bechira L'Tzeira, and the Kavanah was L'Shem Shamayim, for a Dvar Mitzvah, to populate the world. It's after the story of Stone, of course. On the other hand, she was lacking in tznius by calling the child Moav. So that's the complex situation. Oh, he writes here in the note, L'chol achas hoisa malach cheres, habechira kodma arba doros. Just 1 second. I just want to see if I have the mathematics here. It says the Bechira. So the Bechira was the older daughter. She came first, and therefore she got 4 doros earlier from Rus. But on the other hand, the Tzeira had a schus that she used the tzniistic language and called the child Ammon, and therefore she would not be, her descendants would not be subjugated, whereas the descendants of Moab would be subjugated. Now Kusi, we're going to assume here, is what's called Gerei Emes, that the Gerus of the Kusim was sincere, and therefore their status is that of Yisrael. However, Klal Yisrael should not be marrying the Kusim. And Chazal took a very strong approach, instituting a knas, such that if a kusi owns a shore, if our shore attacks the shore of a kusi, right? So again, the kusim, he says, Umar she Hoshiva Melech Ashur V'Orei Shomron Kidei Liyashiv Es HaOretz Liachar Golus Asor Shvatim V'tchil Lo Avdu Es Hashem V'Sholach Aleim Arayos U'Meir Osam His Gairu. All this in Malachim Beis Perek Yud Zayin. And Nechluku B'Gemar B'Kedusha Daf Ayin Hey Im Kevan Shes Gairu Rak Mipnei fear of the Arayos Ein Gerusam Zu Mo'ila. It's not an effective gerus. And in fact, they continue to worship idolatry. And the other opinion says, Geri Emeshem, that they did a second gerus, a full-fledged gerus, which was not machmas yira. Okay, the Rashba understood the way we understood. There was only one gerus, and the machlokas is whether the gerus was mipachat arayos or there was a true gerus. But in any event, at a later period of time, the Chacham found that Mus Yonah, they were worshiping an idol on Har Grizim, and then they made a gzera that they have the status of Akum L'chol Davar. So if it's Akum L'chol Davar, then it means Shal Kusi Shnogach Shal Yisrael Tam Shalim Chatznes Mu'im Shalim. So I guess it wasn't a complete knas to consider them like an Akum. If our shor attacks them, they have no rights to collect. But if their shor attacks our shor, then we have the din of shor tam. This is the Tanna Kamma Shita. Rav Meir is going to disagree. The din of shor tam paying chatzi nezek. He says here, in the name of Rashi, shelo konsu kol kach lachshivim ki akum. There was only a half measure of the knas to consider him like a goy. But Rav Meir Omer, he says a full-fledged measure. Shal Yisrael shenogach shal kusi poter shal kusi shenogach shal Yisrael beitam bein mu'min shalig nezek shalom. So according to Rav Meir, they gave the kusi a din of an akum l'chol davar, as far as nezikin is concerned. So Gemara says, well, maybe the Kesava Rabbi Meir kusim geri arayos saying, he's saying that according to Rabbi Meir, their gerus is not valid, and therefore the kusim have the status of a non-Jew, and that's why Rabbi Meir imposes upon them the law in Nezikin exactly identical to that of a non-Jew. Uremini, I'll bring you a stira from a Mishnah Masechet Nida Daf Nun Vav. Kol aksamim haboy mirekem tahorim. Rav Yehuda metami b'nei shem gerim v'toim. So this is the first part of the brisa of the Mishnah in Nida, the Reisha of the Nida. The Reisha of the Mishnah says that there's a place called Rekem, and when we see a kesem coming from Rekem, then we're machshir it, we're matayr it. Why? Because the people there are goyim, and ein kismei dam nidasan tomim. Rav Yehuda was metamim neishem gerim v'toim. Rav Yehuda says the population of Rekem were those who did undergo gerus, but they were toim v'noagim kechukas hagoyim. Okay, fine. They made mistakes and they did many things that were indicative of the paganistic culture, but nevertheless, their gerus is still a full-fledged gerus, and they have the status of Yisrael Mumar. And therefore, Yisrael Mumar, his kesem is Tomei. And we go on to the Sefer of the Mishnah. Mibein anochrim tahorim, if we find a kesem amongst non-Jews, then the kesem is tar, because kismei goyim are not metamim, but mibein Yisrael, mibein kusim. If we find in an area where we don't know whether the kesem came from Yisrael or from a kusim, then the law is tmeim. And why is it tmeim? So Gemara Nida explains that mibein Yisrael and bein hakusim tmeim v'nimtzu. So again, what are we saying over here? Mibein Yisrael, mibein hakusim. Mibein Yisrael, mibein hakusim tmeim. So that's what we have over here in our text based on the Gemara Nida. So before we get to Rabbi Meir, who's going to express a dissenting view, the Tana Kamma here in the Mishnah Nida is of the opinion that the Kusim have the status of Yisrael, and therefore the Kismeim are Tmeim. Now we can add here another part of the Mishnah that's not quoted here in our Gemara. Im nimtzu b'makom hefker, im nimtzu b'makom Yisrael tahurim, vein lachshel shem adam tamihu, b'shum sheYisrael shomrim al kismeim lechabsam. Period. So that's the case where we found it in a makom hefker. But getting back to the case where we found it in a makom kusim, which the Tana Kamma just formulated the opinion that Tmeim, Rabbi Meir mitame, v'chacham mitame. And the reason why chacham are mitarin is lo nechshedu, meaning hakusim al kismeim. So they also will make sure that if there's a kesem, they'll clean it out. So we don't have to be choshesh for the dam that it came from a kusim. From the fact that Rabbi Meir is mitame, if you find a kesem of makom kusim, it means he considered the kusim as geri emes. So now we have a stira. Because on the one hand, Rabbi Meir treated the kusim in regard to shara mazik and tashlumin nezikin exactly identically to a god, meaning geri arayosen. But on the other hand, we see that Rabbi Meir holds with regard to the Kismeim that Gerei Emeseim of Rabbi Avo. Yeah, you're right. Rabbi Meir, you proved from the Mishnah Nida holds that Gerei Emeseim. However, Knasu Shekonas Rabbi Meir b'mamonam shelo yitamu bahem. In order to avoid our intermarriage with Kusim, because the Kusim, who knows what mamzerim they have, they didn't observe the Torah, is therefore imposed a knas on them, and they cannot collect damages if they were victimized, or we don't have to that's if they were victimized, and on the other hand, if they were the victim, they pay nezek shalom even on the first negith. And all this is kadesh lo yisarvu behem Yisrael v'yisu es b'nosehem. And even though the Gerei Emes, lo rotzu chacham she'isarvu behem mishum she'isarvu behem mamzer. Oh, Gemara Kiddushin Ayin Vav. So this was the response of Rabbi Avo. Master Rab Zera quotes a Mishnah Ksubis Chavtes to raise an objection to Rabbi Avo's statement. V'elu nara sheyesh lam knas. If a man rapes a woman, he has to pay a father a knas of chamishim kesef, and all this is codified in the Torah. He doesn't mention exactly where, but if I remember correctly, it's in Parshas Mishpatim. In any event, he says that Elu Naras Sheyesh Lam Knas, even though there are suros linosel Yisrael, but these are not chayve krisis; these are only chayve lav, and therefore the kedushin is valid. Habala mamzeres valadasid valakusis. Now we just finished saying that according to Rabbi Meir, despite the fact that kusim were geri emes, there was so much mamzerus there that the Chachamim instituted a knas regarding mamonom, and yet here in the Mishnah Ksubis, in the third parak Ksubis, it says clearly that he has to pay the kusis a knas of chamishim kesef. What about the principle of Rabbi Meir that if hifkir mamonim shel akusim, if you're going to maintain that konas Rabbi Meir b'mamonim, and therefore they have to pay nesek sholim, is then hochenami niknos kadei tamu b'hen. We should make a knas that the kusim should not be able to collect the chamishim kesef of a ma'anes. Omer Abaye, and here even without turning to Daf Lamites, we can know what's going to come after the word kidei without cheating. Kidei shelo yehei chotei niska. Let's see if I'm right. Oh, shelo yehei chotei niska. I wasn't trying to show off. I just, this is, a man rapes a woman, and because of the knas to the kusim, we're going to say he gets off scot-free. I mean, imagine that. He's going to go around raping every kusis, without any repercussion. Gemara says, wait a minute. Why can't we have a cake and eat it? Meaning, on the one hand, we can make sure that the chote, the ma'anis, is not a chote niskar, and on the other hand, we can make sure that the kusim will not collect that money of the knas. How? Nasve la'niyim. Why don't we impose the 50 shekel kesef as a knas on the boel, but instead of giving that knas and earmarking for the kuses, we'll earmark it for the aniyim. In other words, if you're going to be machayev this momo, this 50 kesef to the aniyim, to pay the aniyim, which ani has rights to claim that money? No ani can come forward with a tviyah, with a valid tviyah, and say, well, you know what? It's my money, magia li, because the ma'anis can always say, I want to give it to a different ani. And therefore, they didn't impose a payment of the knas to the aniyim. And on the other hand, to consent and say, well, he's not going to pay anything and let him get off the hook, then that would be a chotei niskar. So therefore, he'll pay the kusus. And this leads us to the Mishnah on Daf Lamites. Okay, then. So I wish you a great day and a freilich and Chanukah. Thank you so much.